Okay, a very good morning, everyone. So we are going to start with one of the most important papers for your mains examination, which is the paper called as GS paper for ethics. But before we get into this discussion, let me just outline the syllabus for you. What are the specific things that you can expect in this paper and how you are going to start with the preparation of this paper. See, my approach toward this paper is a bit more, a bit different than just going through, a book or something like that. The approach is different because the questions that are asked, it is going to be asked in the manner that I tell you. It is not something that is bookish at all. The paper is not bookish. The paper only requires, theoretically speaking, some basic aspects of your knowledge on whatever we are going to discuss. And the questions that are asked are more practical by nature. It is more practical by nature. So if you expect that you are going to get theoretical questions, and if you just prepare for theoretical questions, you are going to pay the price there. Don't do that. See, the paper for your just for your convenience, theoretically speaking, the paper can be divided into three parts. We can do what? We can divide the paper into three parts. First is what we call as the psychological ethics. That is the origin of ethics in a human being. The origin of ethics in a human being. That is, as humans, our behavior is dictated by some factors. No, our behavior is dictated by some factors. Factors like values, factors like our attitudes, factors like the emotional intelligence that we possess. So, your syllabus has these parts. What are those? What are attitudes? What are values? What is emotional intelligence? These things. So, this is something that is a core of any human behavior. Whenever we do something, anything. So, if you are here preparing for civil services examination, it depends upon the values that you possess. What does it depend upon? It depends upon the values that you possess. What do you value? And based on that, you make certain decisions. And that is the reason why you are here. Because most of you are skilled enough. Most of you have the necessary background to get a corporate job or to get a job in the private sector. But no, you did not opt for it. Why? You came, you are preparing for civil services. The reason is that there are certain values that we possess. There are certain attitudes that we have. And that is basically what determines our behavior. Clear? So remember, this is where the origin of our behavior is. And this is a very important component of your syllabus. Every year, out of the 13 theoretical questions that you get, 13 theoretical questions, I will even talk about what are the kind of questions that you get, don't worry about it. But out of the 13 theoretical questions that you get in your examination, at least 2 or 3 of them comes from this particular part. So it is like, you can say, somewhere around 1/4 of your syllabus. 1/4 of your syllabus. Clear? Then comes the second part of our discussion, which would be administrative ethics. What it would be? It would be what? Administrative ethics. Now, where are you going to function? Are you going to, after getting into this very service, are you going to function in the government organization or in the private sector? Obviously, you are going to function in the government organization. Now, what is the difference between the government and private sector? Primarily speaking, why is it that when you opt for, suppose you are, no, whenever you work in a private organization, it does not require such kind of formalities that you undergo in this whole, this process. You start with preparation. No, most of you have started preparation 2 years before you are actually going to appear for the examination. Have you ever thought why? Because whenever we talk about administration, public administration, that you are basically, that is what you are going to do after you get into services, your your actions are going to affect not just a few or a limited number of individuals, which is the case in the private sector. What happens in the private sector? If you do something, your actions are going to concern limited number of individuals. If you work in such an organization which has, suppose you are working in an organization, which is a huge multinational organization, then you are working, your actions may concern 5,000, 10,000 individuals. That's it, not more than that. But when you work in the government, and that too in such positions where you have to take administrative decisions, your decisions would be what? Your decisions would be administrative decisions concerning the welfare of so many number of individuals. So there is a certain standard of behavior that you are expected to follow. There is a certain standard of behavior that you are expected to follow. And that is what we are going to study as a part of administrative ethics. Yes, there would be two aspects of it. First is, we are going to study what are the factors that are responsible for, or you can say responsible for lack of administrative ethics or administrative ethics. Because you hear about things like corruption a lot. In public sector, there are issues like corruption. In public sector, you tend to hear about issues which are issues of inefficiency, corruption, inefficiency, such things. So we are first going to try and understand what are the factors that are responsible for it. So we are going to read about things like what's mentioned in your syllabus, things like corruption. We are going to read about things like work culture. ये क्या है? Factors है. What are these factors? Factors that are responsible for either ethics, you can say, or lack of administrative ethics. Clear? And then we are also going to talk about measures. Measures which can be taken to improve administrative ethics. And here you are going to read about something in your syllabus called as probity in governance. Administrative ethics, ethical dilemmas, These factors, these no, this part of your syllabus, you are going to read it here. And then comes the third part, which is more of a philosophical part. That is, you can say, philosophical aspects of our syllabus, which is philosophical ethics. Simply, in a general term, there is no such term as philosophical ethics. I have just come up with this. Now, what are the things that we are going to study here? The very first part of the very first topic that is mentioned in your syllabus, which is ethics in human interface. Ethics in human interface. Then there is a topic called as philosophers and social reformers. Philosophers and social reformers. There are certain thinkers that we go through, like Socrates, Aristotle, Plato, and there are other thinkers as well. But remember, our discussion would be limited to requirements of our paper, that is GS paper 4. I am not going to teach psychology. I am not going to teach you public administration. I am not going to teach you philosophy. Clear? My discussion would be something that would be related to what is going to be asked in your paper and what you can expect out of it. What are the things that you can expect out of it? Clear? That is what our focus would be. And the way I tell you to prepare the paper, if you do it in that manner, out of the 13 questions that we are going to get in your theoretical part, because the way your syllabus is asked, it would be, this is GS paper 4. In GS paper 4, you have 2 sections, which is not the case in other general studies paper. GS paper 4, you have 2 sections. First section is the theoretical section, section A, where you get 13 questions. Every question carries 10 marks. हर क्वेश्चन का 10 मार्क्स एलोकेटेड होते हैं हर क्वेश्चन के लिए. क्लियर? एवरी क्वेश्चन कैरीज 10 मार्क्स. So this is 130 total. And then there is a part 2 of your paper. And what is that part 2 of your paper? It is case studies. Most of you know it. If you don't, now you should know this. There is a case study part also. So every topic that I take up, after every topic that I take up some case studies on those. I'll be taking up some case studies on those. Don't worry about case studies. How you are going to handle those case studies, how you are going to attempt it, किस तरह से करोगे, मैं बताऊंगा आपको. I will tell you exactly how you are going to handle these case studies. The best possible way to do what? To deal with it. ठीक है? So case studies, you get 6 case studies. Every case study has 20 marks allocated to it, which means 120. In total, that is 250. Clear? Now, देखो, ethics is a paper जहां पर generally speaking the score is on the higher side. At least you have to score on the higher side, because if you don't score on the higher side, remember, this is the only paper that has the capability to fetch you 50% marks there in your mains examination. ये सिर्फ एक ही ऐसा पेपर है जो 50% मार्क्स आपको वहां पर दे सकता है. There is no other paper which is going to do that. ठीक है? If you expect that you are going to score 125 or 130 in your GS paper 1, paper 2, paper 3, जरूरी नहीं ऐसा हो पाएगा. हाँ, लॉजिकली स्पीकिंग एंड बीइंग मोर प्रैक्टिकल अबाउट इट, अगर उस हिसाब से सोचते हो तो 100 अगर आप स्कोर करते हो या 105 इफ यू आर स्कोरिंग, इट्स एन आउटस्टैंडिंग मार्क्स. फॉरगेट अबाउट गुड, इट्स एन आउटस्टैंडिंग मार्क्स. ठीक है. बट GS paper 4 has the potential to do what? It has the potential for you to go up to 140 also if you have written a very good paper. It has the potential, and that is the reason why I said when I came and I started introducing this topic, I told you what? I told you this is the most important part of your GS preparation. It will take you the least amount of time, but the amount of importance of this paper is a bit higher. क्योंकि देखो, practically सोचो, how much do you need to get into the service? Forget about any other service, I'm talking about IAS. If you get 45% of the total marks, you get into IAS. You get into IAS if you get 45%. So, if on an average I take it 50% every paper, which means you require 500 in your general studies, you require 250 in your optionals, you require 125 in your essays, and somewhere around 150 in your interviews. Yeah. This is the way you approach this. But it is it is very easy to say this, very difficult to actually get it. Because out of 500 that we have calculated, most of you are going to score less than 400. Less than 400 in your general studies. In your essays, only if you have written an outstanding essay, you score 50%. Otherwise, if you are getting 110, 115, it's an outstanding score. In your interviews, you can never be sure. You can never be sure what you are going to get. So you might feel that you have given your best and you have tried to answer almost all of the questions. In fact, it may so have happened that you have answered all the questions. But still, when you get your score, you have scored mediocre, not very outstanding. So interviews are completely subjective. Forget about it. So there are only one paper which you have to score 50%. In fact, you can score 60% also there, which is your optional papers. And मान लो optional में वो नहीं होता है. Suppose, by chance, because you never know. So if you don't score 300 or 250 there, तो कौन सा ऐसा पेपर है जो आपके इस डेफिसिट को कम कर सकता है, इस मार्क्स के डेफिसिट को? Forget about optional. Just think of your general studies paper and your essay paper. General studies and essay, you are not necessarily going to score 50%. 40% will be an outstanding score. 40% will be an outstanding score. So any deficit that you have, which paper has the potential to actually do away with that deficit? There are only two papers, your optionals and your general studies paper 4. That is the only paper that you have which has the potential to do away with any deficit that you have. ठीक है? तो देखो, your preparation should, you should try your best, लेकिन प्रैक्टिकल अप्रोच रहना चाहिए. आपके प्रिपरेशन का जो अप्रोच होना चाहिए वो बहुत ही प्रैक्टिकल होना चाहिए. और इस बात को समझो, you have to understand this, that if you think that you are going to score 50 and 60% in every paper, you are wrong. So your practical approach would be that I allocate some more time or some more importance to a paper which has the potential to do away with any deficit that I have. और वो पेपर कौन सा है? जीएस पेपर 4 है वो, ठीक है। द वे आई टेल यू, द थिंग्स दैट आई टेल यू, इफ यू डू दैट, आउट ऑफ दीज 13 क्वेश्चंस, इन 13 क्वेश्चंस में से 6 to 7 क्वेश्चंस तो आप प्रिडिक्ट कर लोगे। 6 to 7 questions you will be able to predict that these are the types of questions that are asked. You will be I'm not saying you predict matlab ye ki these are the only questions that are going to come. No, that is not what you can do in UPSC. Yes, what you can do is you will be prepared with some of the topics and some of the questions which you are highly confident that these are the types of questions that can appear there. And accordingly, what will happen, what will be the result of it? You will be prepared with those questions. Very likely, you are going to be asked the same questions. In the last 2 years, I have been able to do this. Around, not necessarily every year 6 questions, sometimes 4, sometimes 5, sometimes 6 questions that I have talked about, it tends to appear. Clear? It's not something that is outstanding, it is just thorough preparation. Clear? वही करना है आपको, you have to be prepared well. If you are prepared well, you are very likely to score very good marks. Clear? Now, what are you going to do for this? When we say you have to be prepared well, what are you going to do for this? Obviously, there will be classroom help in the form of me coming every day, talking about the various aspects of your syllabus. I'll be talking about case studies. I will be telling you how to approach it. I will be talking about things which I feel important, what are important parts of your syllabus. I will be discussing those. I will be emphasizing on it. I will tell you about the current issues that are going on. I will also discuss those issues from the ethical perspective, which is likely to appear. All these things is the classroom help that you get. This is what the classroom that help that you get. But along with this classroom help, what are you going to do? See, the very first and the most important part of your preparation is not reading a book. ठीक है? अगर आप ये सोचते हो कि आप कोई एक अच्छी किताब या कोई एक किताब जो इस पर्टिकुलर टॉपिक के लिए है वो पढ़ लोगे तो उससे हो जाएगा, यू आर रॉन्ग. क्योंकि उसके 2 रीजंस हैं. फर्स्ट रीजन इज देयर इज नो सच बुक. ठीक है, जो जीएस पेपर 4 में आपके लिए जो बुक्स और जो मटेरियल है अवेलेबल, इट इज नॉट दैट कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव which will do this. ठीक है, so there is no such book, and that is the reason why don't run after preparing, don't run after books and trying to prepare for this. Don't do that. हाँ, करना क्या है? This is the most important aspect of your preparation. What are you going to do? As it is, most of you are already doing it, so there is nothing new here. लेकिन approach would be different. मतलब, see, when you are reading a newspaper today, what are the things that you focus upon? Your focus is on things like if there is a national news. Suppose there is something very important going on in the country, I am going to read about it, I am going to jot down the facts that are there with respect to it, and I am going to remember it because that is what I expect is going to be asked. ठीक है? This is the approach that you have. In international news, you are going to do the same thing. Now you read about events, you try and remember those events, the basic factual aspects of the events. That is what you do. यहां पे अप्रोच थोड़ा डिफरेंट होगा. इन जीएस पेपर 4 यू आर गोइंग टू कलेक्ट एग्जाम्पल्स. न्यूज़पेपर से क्या कलेक्ट करोगे? एग्जाम्पल्स. यू आर गोइंग टू कलेक्ट एग्जाम्पल्स, एंड दिस एग्जाम्पल इज व्हाट यू आर गोइंग टू राइट देयर. I'll be talking about a few things later on today itself. But primary thing that you are going to do when you are going through newspapers, etc., is you try and collect more and more examples. अब आप बोलोगे कि सर एग्जाम्पल्स मतलब क्या? What exactly do you mean by examples? Example means when you read about certain outstanding contributions of individuals and institutions, or when you read about something that is completely opposite to it. मतलब या तो उन लोगों के बारे में पढ़ना है या उन इंस्टीट्यूशंस के बारे में पढ़ना है, जानना है, और उन एग्जाम्पल्स को अपने पास रखना है which have a very good contribution they have made, whether it is with respect to social contribution, whether it is with respect to some kind of scientific contribution, whether it is with respect to some kind of political contribution, whether it is with respect to some kind of administrative contributions, any such thing. So if you suppose read about a civil servant's outstanding work, remember it. If you think you will not be able to remember it in long term, write it down. Write it down. It's the same thing that you are going to do with not just individuals but also institutions. Suppose you read about an institution like an NGO. You read about an NGO's work and you get to know that an NGO has done something outstanding in a particular field. Like, do you know about an individual whose name is Kailash Satyarthi? Do you know about him? Nahi hai. He is, in recent years, he was the recipient of Nobel Prize also. ठीक है? He was the recipient of Nobel Prize also in very recent years. I mean, around 3, 4, 5 years ago, he received Nobel Prize also. And he has done outstanding. He and his organization has done outstanding work. For what? Outstanding work with respect to rescue of child labor. I'm talking about these kind of individuals. I'm talking about these kind of individuals. And similarly, when it comes to civil servants, outstanding contributions for a civil servant. Like, again, I'll give you an example so that you understand it. Dekho, when COVID crisis was going on, so there was example that I read. हुआ ये था that there was a doctor in AIMS, and there was a patient that came who was obviously suffering from COVID, and to an extent wherein he was unable to breathe, because that is what happens generally. ठीक है? So he was unable to breathe. तो वहां पे और भी डॉक्टर्स थे, बट दैट इंडिविजुअल वेंट अहेड एंड डिड व्हाट, उनको ब्रीदिंग असिस्ट करने के लिए बिफोर इंस्ट्रूमेंट्स एटसेट्रा वेर ब्रॉट, ही गेव हिम माउथ टू माउथ रिससिटेशन. अब देखो, एक कोविड पेशेंट who is in that critical category, in stage, and a doctor trying to save him, it may so have happened that he would have suffered because of it. हो सकता था, but did not think of it and went ahead. ये क्या है? Outstanding contributions of a civil servant. क्योंकि है तो medical practitioner but working for the government, civil servant ही है. This is what I want. इस तरह के अगर आप examples with name and good examples, if you are able to collect and keep it here, so that when you are writing your mains examination, you can use these examples in writing, or you can say, simply speaking, substantiating your answers. अगर आप ये कर पाओगे, you will find you are going to score very well here. Last to last year, there was one of my students who scored All India rank 5. ठीक है? All India rank 5 थे. And the outstanding thing that he used to do while he was writing his ethics paper was this. ठीक है? क्या करते थे? he used to write a lot of examples, contemporary examples, but no examples, not something which he used to come up with no hypothetically. Nahi, he used to come up with examples that have no that have been no that has happened, and those examples which were known to everyone. He used to write those examples in his answers. हर आंसर थियोरिटिकल आंसर के लिए वो कम से कम ही यूज्ड टू राइट 2 एग्जांपल्स, एटलीस्ट 2 एग्जांपल्स. ही स्कोर्ड 145 इन एथिक्स पेपर. 145 आउटस्टैंडिंग मार्क्स होता है. 145 क्लियर. सो व्हाट यू आर गोइंग टू डू इज दिस. If you are able to do this, if you are able to do this, you will find that it is going to help you immensely. It will make your answer writing better, not just in this paper, but other papers also. Clear? So this is the primary source of your preparation. I'm telling you. देखो, UPSC examination is not about reading books. It is not about reading books. वो एक जमाना होता था where the questions, the nature of questions were like that, and you used to, you know, their aspirants वो क्या करते थे, simply books पढ़ते थे और उनसे उनका काम चल जाता था. But that is not how things work anymore. You have to be more proactive. You have to have a more proactive approach, wherein you need to do what? Wherein you need to know what is going on around you. And you have to prove it to the examiner when you are writing your answers that you know what is going around. When you do this, that is when you succeed. ऐसे ही आप succeed करते हो. Clear? This is the way you approach this paper. That is the reason why whenever I am talking about something, I will always expect you to give good examples for it. So if you are not in the habit of reading the newspapers and knowing about what is the events that are going on, ये habit develop कर लो, क्योंकि ये habit अभी develop नहीं करोगे तो बाद में नहीं होगा. It is something which you develop in the very early stage of your preparation. If you think you are going to develop it just before you give your examinations, it will not happen. आप कुछ ऐसी चीजें करंट अफेयर्स और इन सब चीजों के लिए पढ़ोगे स्पेसिफिकली, क्योंकि दैट इज माय डोमेन, ये पेपर मेरा डोमेन है, तो इन चीजों के लिए आप कुछ ऐसी चीजें पढ़ोगे विच इज नॉट गोइंग टू हेल्प यू. क्लियर? दिस इज द प्राइमरी सोर्स, along with obviously theoretically whatever we are going to discuss, whatever case studies you are going to get, whatever questions that I am going to give you, ये सारी चीजें हम करेंगे in class discussion. But along with it, this is something that you do later on. ठीक है? दूसरी चीज, whenever I am talking, you are not supposed to do that. ठीक है? क्लास में 3 घंटे मैं बोलूंगा और 3 घंटे के बाद आपको जितना बोलना है बोलना. क्लियर? दैट इज व्हाट आई एम गोइंग टू डू. आई एम गोइंग टू टॉक फॉर 3 hours. व्हेन आई टेल यू दैट गिव मी एग्जांपल्स, व्हाट इज द आंसर टू इट, यू आर गोइंग टू स्पीक. उसके बाद पूरा दिन पड़ा हुआ है आपके पास, आपको जो करना है करो, लेकिन 3 घंटे मेरे क्लास में नहीं. 3 घंटे मेरे क्लास में, 3 hours इन माई क्लास, आई एम गोइंग टू स्पीक. ठीक है? वट एवर यू वॉन्ट टू डू after my class, you are most welcome. I have nothing to do with that. ठीक है? Moving on. So this is basically how we are going to classify our paper into. But don't think that this is the इस तरह के questions, मतलब इस तरह के you can say watertight compartment के basis पर आपसे पूछा जाएगा. No, there will always be interrelation. Psychological ethics will be related to administrative ethics will be related to this, and so on. वो सारी चीजें होंगी. That is something that is going to continue. Clear? Moving on. Okay, let's start with the introduction part of our discussion. What are the things that we are going to discuss? We are going to talk about four terminologies. Four terminologies. What are those? Morality, ethics, values, and attitude. Yes. Who is going to tell me what is your understanding of what these are? What is your understanding of what these are? Tell me this. What do you think is morality? Can you give me an example of a moral action? Can anyone give me an example of a moral action? Yes, tell me. An example of a moral action. Morality, what is it? Educational belief. Individual's belief, yes. Individual's belief, okay. Yes. And after that, what did you say? Which he seems to be correct or which he feels to be correct. Absolutely correct. This is what morality is. It is what? It is an individual's belief, or you can say individual's standard of behavior. It is an individual's standard of behavior which, according to him, it is the correct standard, or you can say it is the right standard of behavior. What is it? It is the right standard of behavior. Clear? So what exactly does this mean? That is, when I say morality, what is morality for us? Morality for us is our individual beliefs. It is our individual belief. हम क्या सोचते हैं? Clear? Now, when I'm focusing on this discussion or this particular idea, that is, it is individual's belief. It is individual's belief. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is, it may differ from an individual to individual. So what I consider to be moral action and what you think is moral may be two different parameters. There will be two different things for it. Clear? So when I talk about morality, always remember, morality differs from individual. Morality differs from individual to individual. These are individual specific standards. They are individual specific standards. Like, let's try and understand this through an example. What do you think about war? If I ask you a simple question, what do you think? What is your opinion about war? Can a war be moral? No. Yes. Can a war be moral? Yes. No. देखो, Is there a difference between what someone thinks and what the other individual thinks? Yes. It is, it is different when it comes to individuals. What is different? Their views on what is war or can war be moral. This is what their standard of morality. Their standard of morality. So for me, war can be justified. War can be moral. Why? The reasons associated with it. Not all kinds of war, but the reasons associated with it. If suppose I feel that a war which has, which is done to protect a country's sovereignty, or a war which is to ensure that a previous injustice that has happened, it is redressed, ठीक किया जा रहा उसे. According to me, that war can be moral. According to me, that war can be moral. Another example. What do you think about capital punishment? Capital punishment समझते हो? Death penalty. What do you think about death penalty? Is death penalty moral? What do you think? क्या death penalty सही है? Do you think we should continue with death penalty or do away with it? Suppose you get a question on morality of capital punishment. Is capital or should capital punishment be prohibited? बहुत सारी countries ने किया है ना? There are lot of countries which have completely done away with capital punishment. Look at examples. Lot of European countries, they have done away with capital punishment. खत्म कर दिया उन्होंने capital punishment. So just think of it in that manner. If we look at capital punishment from that angle, that way, if we look at capital punishment, can we say capital punishment is moral? Can we say capital punishment is moral? There are certain countries which have prohibited it. उनको लगता है नहीं है सही. But just think of it in this manner. In a country like India, we still continue with capital punishment. Though it is not something which is used very commonly by the judiciary, it's not used very commonly. Capital punishment, what is the basis of awarding capital punishment? आपको पता है किस बेसिस पर कैपिटल पनिशमेंट दिया जाता है? What is the basis? Any ideas? Death penalty is in India awarded only when there is a rare of the rarest case. मतलब it's not that any individual who has committed murder will always get death penalty. No. Death penalty is given in rare of the rarest cases. Rare of the rarest cases. We continue with death penalty. And in India, it's very uncommon for an individual to be punished with death penalty and the death penalty being carried out. If you look at the last few years में हमने किसको डेथ पेनल्टी दिया है? निर्भया accused. उससे पहले अगर आप जाओगे तो most of the cases were of cases of terrorism, not otherwise. Cases of terrorism. Ajmal Kasab was awarded death penalty, carried out. Similarly, there were a few individuals, but not otherwise. What does it say? Rare of the rarest case. And for some of us, like my personal belief, if you talk about me, my personal belief is that it still is an effective deterrence and we should continue with it. देखो, my moral beliefs or my moral standards may be very different from what you think. आप में से कुछ लोग ऐसा सोच सकते हो and you very much feel that even death penalty is wrong because we need to give every individual a second chance. होता है? Every individual needs to be given a second chance. even to an extent wherein the individual may have committed a heinous crime. But your fundamental belief says every individual has the potential to reform himself. Your standard of behavior. It is your standard of behavior. ये आपकी morality है. My morality is or may be different. My morality may be different. Let's take another example. Let's take another example for it. See, there is a issue that is going on in India, which is on the act of begging. है ना? भीख मांगना, begging. Now, in India, though there is a legal prohibition on it, है ना? There are laws against it. In India, you will find there are laws against it. There are laws against it. But you will find that there are also certain states which have or which do not prohibit it completely. There is not a complete prohibition on it. But forget about states' action. Talk about an individual's. Suppose you are going somewhere, you see an individual who you think is physically disabled. Physically. And because of the extent of disability may be such. The extent of disability, मतलब disability सिर्फ disability नहीं, extent of disability may be such that you feel that if I pay this individual any certain sum of money, there is nothing wrong with it. There is nothing wrong with it, and that is the reason you decide to do it. What do you decide? You decide to pay the individual. Now, what your morality dictates or what someone else's morality or standard may dictate, it may be different. There may be an individual who sees that individual and says, no, if I pay the individual today, it may so happen that tomorrow this individual gets into a habit of it. And you think that such a kind of behavior need not be reinforced. Reinforce नहीं करना है, इसीलिए पैसा नहीं देना है. You don't have to, you will not want to reinforce such a behavior. You will not want to reinforce such a behavior. What is the result of it? The result of it is that you don't pay. Clear? Your standard, my standard, someone else's standard may be different. So, whenever we talk about morality, morality is an individual's standard and it always differs from an individual to individual. It always differs from an individual to individual. Clear? Understood what is morality? Yes, everyone understood this? Okay, moving on to the next. This is ethics. Now, what do you think is ethics? देखो, generally speaking, we consider ethics and morality not to be very different from each other. In fact, we tend to use it with the same meaning itself. Sometimes I would consider a behavior performed by an individual to be immoral. I will refer it to be immoral, and the other times I would refer the same behavior to be unethical also. But does that mean they are the same? And if they are not, what is the difference between the two? Ethics and morality. What is the difference between the two? Yes, anyone? What do you think is the difference between ethics and morality? Ethics is a belief that is that is accepted by a a particular society, which can be termed as ethical and unethical. So anything that is accepted by the society is ethical. It can be said anything that is accepted by the society is ethical. No. But yes, your first part of, no, the first part of your discussion, no, what you said is absolutely correct. That is, what is the difference between ethics and morality? What you said was absolutely correct. Morality is an individual's belief. मेरा आपका अलग अलग हो सकता है. My standard may differ from your standard. But in case of ethics, it is not the same. In case of ethics, it is not the same. Why? Because ethics is not an individual's standard. Rather, ethics is always ethics is something which is commonly accepted. Ethics is something which is commonly accepted. Like he gave an example wherein he said, so society. So if we say, no, if we look at an example of a socially accepted practice, a socially accepted practice or a socially accepted standard can definitely be a part of this. क्योंकि सोसाइटी में कुछ लोग रह रहे हैं, there are some individuals who are staying in the society, and if there is a belief that there is a specific standard and this standard is correct, that means if I perform that behavior based on that standard, my behavior will be classified as ethical. My behavior will be classified as ethical. Now, I am repeating myself. बहुत ध्यान से सुनो मैं क्या कह रहा हूं. Listen to me very carefully. What did I say? What is ethics? Ethics is a commonly accepted standard of behavior. A commonly accepted, not individually, a commonly accepted standard of behavior. That is what is ethical, or that is what is ethics. Which means when we live in a society, that means society में कोई individual तो नहीं है. There are so many individuals living together. So we are living together. So if the society has a common acceptance of a standard, यानी सोसाइटी के हिसाब से दिस इज करेक्ट, दिस स्टैंडर्ड ऑफ बिहेवियर इज करेक्ट, इन दैट केस दैट मे बी क्लासिफाइड एज एथिकल. That may be classified as ethical. However, not everything that is commonly accepted as right is always ethical. Let's take an example. If we go back to certain medieval practices, like the practice of sati, the practice of sati. Now, it was a commonly accepted practice. That means in the society, it was commonly accepted. Or for that matter, forget about going back to the medieval ages and the medieval era. Let's talk about the contemporary era itself. In India, till very recently, did we have the practice of triple talaq? Now, can we consider such practices to be ethical? Obviously not. How can we consider such practices to be ethical? But does that mean that anything which is automatically accepted by the society or a common group of individuals, does that always become ethical? No. There are practices in India which still continues. Practices such as the dowry. Every religion in one form or the other has this practice. It has this practice. Practices of child marriages. Practices of child marriages. Despite the fact that we understand the repercussions of it, that is, the issues with respect to mental health, or for that matter, health in general. But is it commonly accepted? Yes, it's a commonly accepted practice. Dowry, it's a very commonly accepted practice. Do you know about something called as do you know what this is? Glass ceiling. What is it? Yes. Glass ceiling is an effect which which works something like this. You will find this prevalent in a lot of organizations with respect to the you can say the promotion of women to higher positions. Glass ceiling, that is, there is a barrier, but this barrier seems to be invisible because it's transparent. Glass is transparent. So because of the transparency, it may not feel that there is a barrier there, but this barrier does exist. And this is why, because there is a gender which is treated, you can say, in an inferior manner. Glass ceiling. Generally, you will find glass ceiling is something that is in effect in lot of organizations. Take examples. Take an example of looking at Fortune 500 companies. Do you know what is Fortune 500 companies? जो top companies हैं पूरे world के. The Fortune 500 companies. And look at how many of those companies are actually being run by CEOs, women who are women. And you would find that out of these 500, not even 10% are being run by women CEOs or MDs or women in very high position. Why? Glass ceiling. Now, isn't this a commonly accepted practice? That is the reason why it is visible ना. देखो, अगर commonly accepted नहीं होता तो इतना visible नहीं होता. But it is so visible. We may not necessarily explicitly accept that this does exist, but we see it. There are evidences of it saying to us or pointing to us that it does exist. Can we consider them to be, these practices to be correct? Nahi. These practices, are they commonly accepted? Yes, they are commonly accepted. Practices of dowry, practices of triple talaq, practices of n number of these practices that are there, including the patriarchal society that is there, because of number of reasons women and their rights are not considered similar to the rights of the other gender, that is men. Can we consider these practices to be correct, ethical? The might right term would be ethical. The answer is no. So, if that is the case, then why am I saying that ethics is a commonly accepted standard? because these are commonly accepted standards, but they don't seem to be correct. These do not seem to be correct. These are not right. We cannot say that these are, there is nothing wrong with such practices. We cannot say that. So what is then ethical? Remember, whenever we say ethics, ethics is, yes, they are commonly accepted standards, but ethical practices do also have an end associated. Uska result kya hota hai? Consequence kya hai? And what is that end associated with it? The end associated with it is, it will lead to something which is in common good. It is in something that is in common good. Do you understand what is the meaning of common good? जो सबके लिए अच्छा हो, जो सबके लिए अच्छा हो, या if we are talking about the society here, it means it is good for the society as a whole. It is good for the society as a whole. Are you understanding what I'm trying to say? Yes or no? Yes? देखो, today is the first class. The way you understand what I'm trying to talk about today is what you are going to also, because this is then my understanding, my flow, that okay, this is where you are able to get what I'm trying to say. And there are, if I talk about something else, you may not able to understand it. So whatever you don't understand, you are going to talk about that today itself, because only then I will understand what is the kind of flow that you want. Clear? So anything that you don't understand, you will point out, sir, nahi samajh mein aaya, you don't understand. I will repeat it, don't worry about it. Clear? So what is morality and how is it different from ethics? Morality is an individual's standard of behavior, or an individual's understanding of what is right, what is wrong. And this differs from an individual to individual. It differs from an individual to individual. Why? Because it may so happen that what I consider to be correct may not necessarily be considered by you also to be correct. And the best example for it is, I asked you a question on what is war, and do you think war is legitimate? Kya war sahi hota hai? You said, some of you said no, some of you said, sir, yes. I talked about capital punishment and I asked your views on it. Some of you said yes, some of you said no. I asked you about certain practices. You said that certain practices like capital punishment, which is in India going on, but in Western countries it has, some countries, not all, some countries it have been completely prohibited. On the other hand, ethics is not my individual understanding, but our common understanding. It is our common understanding of what is correct and what is wrong. And this is always something which will result into common good, because certain practices which are commonly accepted to be right may not always be right. Certain practices which are commonly accepted to be right. देखो, कुछ ऐसे practices होते हैं जो हमें ऐसा लगता है, या जो हम society as a whole की अगर हम बात करते हैं, society as a whole में hundreds of years से चले आ रहे, maybe thousands of years. देखो, if it was not commonly understood as correct, अगर हम, आप या बाहर के लोग जो एक सोसाइटी में रहते हैं, इफ वी वुड नॉट हैव कॉमनली अंडरस्टूड इट टू बी राइट, वी वुड हैव डन अवे विथ इट. हम छोड़ देते उन प्रैक्टिसेस को, लेकिन हम आज भी उन प्रैक्टिसेस को कंटिन्यू कर रहे हैं. वी आर स्टिल कंटिन्यूइंग विद दोस practices such as, if we talk about in India, certain practices that have emerged since the medieval era, like if we talk about the practice of sati, hundreds of years से वो प्रैक्टिस चल रहा था. prohibited in 1850s, but it was continuing before that hundreds of years. No, it was a medieval practice. Similarly, we talk about dowry system, the way it has been modified and the way it has now been used. So not everything that we commonly consider to be right is always correct. So then what is the difference between what is an ethical behavior and what is not? The consequence of it. An ethical behavior would always have a result, a consequence which is in common good. सबके लिए भला होगा उसका. देखो, when I say in common good, it does not mean instantaneously. I'm talking about the long-term consequence of it. I'm talking about the long-term consequence of it. I'm not talking about what is instantaneously going to happen. Suppose my son, just an example. Now, my son gets up in the morning, says, I'll not go to the school today. I may force him to go to the school. He goes, though he may not necessarily like my actions that day, but it may not necessarily be that it is not in his good, maybe after 10 years, maybe after 5 years, because I may reinforce a behavior like punctuality. No, you have to every day get up, go to the school. Now with this, what happens? It leads to development of a value. What is in long term? He knows, okay, every day this is a job that I have to do. I have to get up, go to the school, learn, come back. And this is what a trait that he develops in long term. है ना? Common good, not instantaneously, but in long term. है ना? So same is the case with also ethics. Ethical practices may not necessarily have instantaneous right results, but it is good for the society in long term. It is good for the society in long term. That is what can be classified as an ethical action. Clear? Yes, please. Yes, please. Common good, what do you mean by common good? But how is that in common good? Hmm. 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 देखो, what you are talking about is not ethics. Like, if suppose, let's take, see, he has talked about it. Let's just build on this example and try and understand it. ठीक है? Same example, but I will put it differently. Clear? Suppose we are talking about a case study. What is the case study? Your company has been allocated a contract to build a dam. To build a dam. You are the project manager and you are responsible for completing the project timely. For some undue reasons, or you can say some unforeseen circumstances, it results into the delay of the project by 6 months. 6 months. Now, see, it is an infrastructure project. The efficiencies of the project is not just dependent upon your actions. The efficiency of the project is also dependent upon the actions of others. Though you are responsible for their actions, now you go to the concerned minister to ask for an extension because the deadline, you know, you are not able to complete the project. You will not be able to complete the project in time. You go to the concerned minister and ask for an extension. The minister is ready to give you that extension, provided what? Provided you are ready to pay a bribe. He also threatens you that if you are not willing to pay a bribe, if you are not willing to pay a bribe, then in that case, he may blacklist your company for any future government projects. This is not just going to personally harm your reputation, it is also going to harm the reputation of the company. It is also going to harm the reputation of the company. Because it is a project which is going to do what? Because it is a project which is going to result into sorry, building a dam. The monsoons are approaching, and if you do not complete the project in time, or in that 6-month extension that you have, it is going to result into loss of life and property also. Even if you decide to expose the concerned minister, it may still result into the project not being completed in time. What are you going to do? Are you ready to pay the bribe? Same question. I have come up with a case study which was asked previously in UPSC, the same case study. What he said, the same case study, the same question, I have put it in a case study, and I have done what? I have tried to come up with an answer for it. Now, what does he say? Like, if in this situation, if you are not ready to pay the bribe, अगर आप bribe pay करने के लिए तैयार नहीं हो, because yes, as an individual, I have certain standards of morality, and my moral standards are dictating, no, you should not, you have not done anything wrong here, and you should not be able to do what? You should not, no, you should not be paying the bribe. Clear? Understood the case study itself? Now, what are you going to do? He says, sir, what happens if there is an action which may not seem to be the right action, but it may result into a common good? Like in this case, if you are ready to pay the bribe, if you are ready to pay the bribe, it will not just give you an extension of 6 months, it is also going to ensure that before the monsoon approaches and before the monsoon comes, you are able to complete the project, and because of it, you will also be able to, or in this case, the infrastructure that you have created will also be able to do what? It will also be able to protect the life and also property of n number of individuals. Clear? Now he says, so this is in common good. This is in common good. So can we consider this to be ethical? Can we consider this to be ethical? Now, in this case, you have to understand it differently. See, in this situation, you might opt for paying a bribe and completing the project. There is no problem with it. There is no problem with it, because there are certain things which are at stake, which is higher than just your personal ego or your personal standards. Because in this case, because you are doing something which is going to create an asset for the society, you are a civil servant. Though you might be working for a company, but your actions are such. So as a civil servant, you are much more than your individual self. You have to look at what actions does not just satisfy your personal ego, but what results into a common good, something that is good for others as well. It is something which is good for others as well. So he says, sir, in this case, is corruption correct? Would that be correct? Now, the answer is that you have to look at it in long term. Now, this is a single case study. In this single case study, if you are ready to pay the bribe, fine. But what happens if this continues tomorrow for some other institution, third for some other institution, fourth for some other institution? Would that result into common good? No, it will not. It will not. So when we are looking at it from the common good angle, there is a problem that we do see here. Yes, individually speaking, if you put me or if you tell me that, sir, according to you, what is the right answer? I will always say, yes, in this situation, I will pay the bribe. I will complete the task. Once I'm done with the task, I am going to whistle blow on the minister that he had asked me to pay the bribe. I paid the bribe, and then no, that is what I did because I wanted to complete the project, and then I'm going to disclose this information. That is my way. That is what I think would be the correct answer. And why am I saying this? Because in longer term, because if I try and reinforce this behavior once, what will be the result of it? Tomorrow there will be another minister or another project in which the same minister concerned will ask me for another bribe again, because he knows I am willing to do that. So in long term, this is not going to be in good, because as a individual who is managing the project and a member of a company, I have to look at the profitability of the company as well. I am not as an individual, I am working for a company. So a company which is a private sector company, my goal is also to make the company profitable. So this, whatever sum of money I have paid to the concerned minister, don't you think I will have to get that money back from some or the other actions? And what are those actions? Again, it may result into specifically providing a service to the people, to the citizens, which may be at a lower cost, but I have to charge higher. Why? Because I have to get that money. So profitability is also an important factor that I have to look at. As a civil servant, you may not. But as a member of a private organization, profit motive is something which keeps my organization alive. It is what is going to ensure that my organization in long term is also able to survive this. So see, common good is something which is a very important parameter for any actions to be classified as ethical or not. Because once you think of an action which may at that particular moment seem to be correct, but in long term it may not necessarily be correct. That is the reason why I said ethics may not always result into instantaneous right action, right result, but in long term it may result into some common good. Clear? Are you getting this? So paying the bribe is he has asked a very good question. The reason is that this is this is a kind of question that you tend to every year get on a case study. In a case study, if you go through the previous year case studies, you will find that every year one case study would put a civil servant in such a situation wherein you have to choose between your personal welfare. No, you have to choose between your personal welfare, which means either looking for your good or looking for the good of the society as a whole. No, overall good. You have to always choose, like whether it may be corruption, whether it may be transparency and something like this. So that is where you will have to take this view that what is in common good. Clear? Koi problem hai, you can ask. Don't worry if you have any problem, any questions, I will answer. Is this understood what is ethics? Okay. Moving on to the next two, values and attitudes. But I will do what? I will deal with values in the next page. So let's talk about values. Let's talk about values. So what are values? Yes. Values are principles. What kind of principles? Principles that seem to be correct. Yes. Which guides one's behavior. Okay. As he correctly said, certain principles, or he says certain rules, certain norms. And what are these principles, rules, and norms about? It is a source of, you can say, guidance of what? Our behavior. So, what are these? These are guides. These are guides for our behavior. Clear? Now, a very simple way to understand what values are would be, values are anything that we value. Anything that we value. See, this is a more technical way at looking at what are values. I will try and simplify this. What are values? Anything that you value. Anything that you value is your values. Let's take an example to understand it. See, as an individual, like you come here, and for you, when you are in this process of preparing for civil services, you tend to start understanding what are the key aspects or what are the key things which could lead to your success. Like, if suppose you come to the class daily, and when you come here, you learn something and you feel that this is something that is going to ensure my success. What will be the result of it? You start valuing it. And as a result, your behavior will always be guided by it. It will always be guided by it. So you will understand the importance of it and you do that daily. Or suppose, see, we tend to have some friends. Suppose if I have a friend or you have a friend. In friendship, what is the factors that become very important for us? We start valuing, if I value your friendship, in that case, I will be loyal towards you. I will be what? I will be truthful towards you. What are these? These are nothing but values. These are nothing but values. Let's take another example. See, as a human being, our behavior is very much dependent upon certain principles, certain rules, certain norms. So, if I have learned this principle that I am going to live my life on a principle that ever I see an individual in need, I will help that individual. I will help that individual. Ever, if I see any individual who is in need, I will ensure that I do what? I help that very individual. I will ensure that I help that very individual. What is this? This is a value that I have. This is a value that I have. And tomorrow, when you are going somewhere, you see an individual, suppose you are driving somewhere, you see an individual who has suffered with an accident. Because this is a value that you possess, what would be the result of it, the consequence of it? The result or the consequence of it would be that you do what? You stop, you help that individual, and then you continue with whatever you are doing. Your values do what? It guides your behavior. It guides your behavior. Your values become so important to you that you ensure that your actions will always be in accordance to and never contrary to your values. Never contrary to your values. Let's take an example. See, suppose you one day this happens. You are studying. It's quite late. It's around 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. Your mother finds you studying late at night. She comes to you and she does what? She brings you a glass of water and says that you should have this water first, then continue with it. Then she goes back to her bed, and at around 3 she returns. After around 1 or 2 hours, she returns. She sees you studying again. This time she comes, she closes your book and says, now please go to your bed and you can continue with this tomorrow also. You are trying to study something which is very important. You have a test tomorrow. You are not yet done with your syllabus. And you are so frustrated with her actions that you start shouting at her. आपकी वजह से फेल होऊंगा मैं. You start saying this. So with your outburst, she does what? She goes back, leaves you, she goes back. And after she goes, are you or will you still be able to continue with your studies? No. It becomes difficult. Why? Because this is our values. These are what? These are our values. As an individual, I have learned. What have I learned? I have learned that I will be respecting my elders. And forget my elders, my own parents. We are taught what? As humans, when we start, when we get, specifically in a society like that of India's, we learn that our parents are, if not the God itself, they are next to them. And what have I done? My behavior in this case has been against what values we have learned. So what am I going to do? I would still not be able to, despite the fact that I wanted to. I shouted at my mother just because I wanted to continue with my preparation. But I'm not able to do that anymore. And I will not be able to do that unless I apologize to her. Or at least if not apologize, I do something which ensures that relationship becomes back to normal. What is it? This is the principles that we are talking about. These are the principles, the rules, the norms. And these are our values. And this is what we value. Every action of yours is a reflection of your values. How? I'm telling you. See, some of you were here before I arrived. Some of you came here late after I started the class. Some of you will do that every day. You will be late every day. And some of you will be here every day punctually on the right time. What is it you know? It is nothing but your values. What you value. If you value punctuality, and if you feel that as a human being, you are to be understood in this manner, this is who I am. What? I am always punctual. This is who you are. It is a value that you have. You will, without thinking of it, you will always be in time, not just here, anywhere that you go. It is values. There was a scholar, you know him also, philosopher, is very well known, Immanuel Kant. You must have heard about his name even if you have not read about him. Immanuel Kant was an individual who was, not, he did not have a very strong family background. That means he was not very wealthy. He was not very wealthy. He was not very good looking also. That, he's outstandingly something. No. So he said, as an individual, I will always be known for my actions because I don't have anything else. I am not very wealthy. I am not an individual who is good looking, so everyone would remember me in that manner. I would always be known for only and only my actions. And one of the important aspect of his action was he was always punctual. Immanuel Kant was known for this, that if suppose he has told that I'm going to meet you at 3 p.m. and if the clock says 3 and he has not arrived, it means the clock is wrong, not him. He was that kind. What was that? His values. What was it? His values. This is what happens. If you have a habit of punctuality, you will understand. Whenever you are late somewhere, you feel restless. That even if it doesn't matter whether the event is very important, not that important, it doesn't matter. But for those who do not have the value of punctuality, for them it doesn't matter. Even if the event is very important, for them they will always be at ease, even if they are late. Values hai. That is what happens. When you violate the principles or the values that you have decided for yourself or you have learned, it evokes a certain response, a negative response. It evokes a certain negative response. Clear? Now, have you understood what I'm saying in terms of values? Understood this? Any doubts? Should I deal with it again? Yes or no? Yes or no? No? What is the difference between values and morality? Morality, you said what? Sir, it is individual standards. What are values? Yes? Values can be social and individual. Absolutely correct. The first difference between values and morality is values can always be individual values. So as individuals, we have certain values and we also have social values. We also have some social values. That means the values of the society. When I say individual values, what do I mean? The values of an individual. I hope you are writing everything that I have written. Values of an individual. And when I say society or social values, what do I mean? Values of a society. Values of an individual and values of a society. Clear? Clear? Now, if it is clear, what is the difference between individual values and morality? And what is the difference between social values and ethics? Yes, go ahead. You are trying to say something. Question. I said values are of two types. There are individual values, that is values of an individual, and values of a society or social values, that is common values. I asked you, what is the difference between morality versus individual values? First, let's talk about this. Then we'll move on to the next question. Yes, anyone? What is the difference between individual values and society, social values? Sorry, what is the difference between morality and individual values? No, no, I'm not talking about social values. I'm talking about individual values. It remains what? Individual values remains universal. No, no, no. My values would differ from that of yours. My values will differ from that of yours. How can individual values be universal? Hmm. Anyone? Okay. Draw this diagram. First, draw this diagram and then I will move on with the explanation. This circle represents individual values and this circle represents morality. This represents the overlap between the two. That means my individual values and my morality will definitely overlap. When I say what is the difference, it does not mean they are absolutely different. Clear? So some things which are a part of my values, individual values, it is also something which is dictated or which dictates my moral standards. So that you are not confused at all, I will write this statement that I have just said. Individual values overlap with morality. Individual values overlap with morality. Is there any confusion in this statement? Is there any confusion in this particular statement? Anyone having any difficulty, don't worry. See, don't think of you as an individual who is here to protect your ego and your reputation. It doesn't make sense. Clear? So if you think that if I ask this question, I would consider you or someone, your colleagues will consider you to be, no, in any way not good as them, it doesn't make that sense. If you have any problems, you will ask me because I am the one who will clarify that, no one else. Clear? Individual values will overlap with morality. Why? Because Next statement. Morality is the result of our values, individual values. It is the result of it. Morality is the result of what? It is the result of our individual values. Just think of it. Make this connection. देखो, मैंने क्या कहा? I said morality is something that is a guide for an individual's behavior, and obviously it is individualistic. Don't you think कि कोई ऐसी चीज जिसको मैं वैल्यू करता हूं, because it is a guide, principle, norms, will it not overlap with morality? Yes. अगर मेरा बिहेवियर मेरी मोरालिटी डिपिक्ट करता है, दिखाता है, और मेरा बिहेवियर मेरी वैल्यूज को भी दिखाता है, तो उनके बीच में तो ओवरलैप होगा ही होगा ना. ऐसा कैसे हो सकता है कि मेरे कुछ बिहेवियर मेरी मोरालिटी शोकेस करते हैं और मेरे कुछ बिहेवियर मेरी वैल्यूज दिखाते हैं? नहीं. देयर विल ऑलवेज बी एन ओवरलैप. देयर विल बी सम बिहेवियर ऑफ माइन which will always overlap with my morality as well as my values. And why is this? This is because the morality that we hold, or you can say the standard of morality that we hold, it is also the result of my values, the values that I have learned. अगर मुझे बचपन से ये सिखाया गया है, बेटा, you should not be doing what? You should not be hurting someone who has not caused you pain. If this is what I have learned from the very beginning, since I have come to my senses, if this was what I was learned, this is what I have learned. I was taught this by my family. I was taught this by my teachers. I was taught this by my any individual who I refer to as my guru, whether he is a spiritual or for that matter an academic individual. अगर उन्होंने मुझे यही सिखाया है, doesn't that become a part of my moral standard? Tomorrow when I perform my behavior where I have to look at or judge what is right and what is wrong, I will always take this into account. Never hurt someone who has not caused you pain, because if I do that, that was against what morality dictates. I've learned this. Now when I hold this standard, I value it. It is a part of my values as well. It is a part of my values as well. And that is the reason why I have written morality is the result of what? The values that I hold as an individual. I hold certain values, and morality that is formed within me, it is also the result of it. Clear? Are you getting? Have all of you understood? Should I repeat this second point? Understood this? Anyone? Yes, understood this? Yes. What was your question? Coming late to the class. There is one problem with that. Coming late to the class cannot always be judged in moral sense. There is one problem. Otherwise, there is nothing wrong with it. There is whenever we tend to talk about morality or moral behavior, we always look at it from this particular point, or we judge it from this particular point, that have my actions resulted into wrong for someone else, then my actions will be considered as immoral. So I'll modify that. If you come to the class late, and not only do you come to the class late, but also take up an action which results somehow in distraction for others, that would be immoral. That would be immoral. And then that is a part, you can see that overlap. Lack of punctuality plus immoral action. Clear? Clear? See, this example would become a bit more for today's class. Don't worry about it. If you have not understood, don't worry about it. You will understand it later on. Today, my objective was not to talk about this example. My objective was that you understand these two statements. Have you understood this? Clear? There is one more statement. There is one other difference also that is there between individual values and morality. Sometimes individual values are disvalues. That means they are not right, they are wrong values. Let's take an example. Let's talk about this anger. देखो, lot of us tend to say this. देखो, ऐसे तो मुझे गुस्सा नहीं आता है, लेकिन जब मुझे गुस्सा आ जाए तो मुझे कोई रोक नहीं सकता है. Just try and introspect the statement. You are allocating values to your anger. You are doing what? You are considering it to be important. That is the reason why you're saying, I don't get angry always, but when I get angry, no one can stop me. You are allocating, this value, or you can say you are allocating values to something that is wrong. Anger in this case. That is what? A disvalue. A disvalue. Like he gave an example of lack of punctuality. Punctuality is a value. Lack of it is what? Lack of it is a disvalue. Lack of it is a disvalue. Love is what? It is a value. But there are two things which can be considered as a disvalue associated with this. Like if we talk about, suppose, hatred, or forget about hatred, when we say, when we talk about love to an extent wherein you become too possessive about an individual. So see, if I am an individual who loves, suppose, my family, fine. My parents, fine. My anyone, fine. But I cannot be too possessive about it. That means I cannot consider an individual or something which is too possessive being love. Or suppose, let's take another example. If we say courage, courage is a value. But being rash about it is not a value. It is a disvalue. It is a disvalue. If you are courageous, fine. But it does not mean that you start doing certain actions which has the capability to have fatal results, consequences. That cannot be considered as what? That cannot be considered as a value. What is it? A disvalue. It becomes what? A disvalue. Clear? So values, morality is always right. Doing right actions. According to you, it is right. It is about doing the right actions. That is what we call as moral. Because if my actions are going or having negative consequences for you, it cannot be considered moral. But values can be either good or bad, or simply speaking, human values or disvalues. Simply speaking, disvalues. Remember, Values can also have a negative effect. We tend to allocate values to something negative also, like anger is an example of it, or possessiveness is an example of it, or being rash is an example of it. Clear? What are those? Disvalues. They are what? They are disvalues. What is the difference between values and morality? The difference between them is there is an overlap, but they are not completely overlap, because individual values sometimes also includes disvalues. They also include disvalues, and this values that are there, they are not the part of moral actions. They cannot be moral. So there is a difference there. I will explain this again. Try and understand this. When I say morality, morality will always have good consequences. But values can sometimes be of such nature which may have bad consequences. Why? Because they are disvalues. They are disvalues. Values are not always correct. Let's try and take another example of it. Looking at the current, you can say the current generation. When I look at them from this particular perspective, देखो होता क्या है कि in our times, even today, we are not that much concerned about commodities. Commodities, like what kind of gadget that I have. It is not that important for me. But it may be very important for someone else. And that has some negative consequences. Commodification. You are allocating values to something that may not necessarily be right. Suppose I hold, no, if suppose I have a relevant gadget that I hold, fine for me because I use it. But when we talk about people judging individuals on the basis of it, if the individual has an iPhone, तो वो अच्छा है. Yes, this happens. Today you will find people judge people on the basis of their success is judged on the basis of the commodities that they hold. How big is their house? What kind of car they have? What kind of gadgets they hold? What are these? These are sometimes a reflection of an individual's character, considered as a reflection of an individual's character. So not always people are judging you on the basis of the fact that what you do for the society, what kind of individual you are, is judged by the size of the house that you have, by the kind of vehicle you drive, and so on. What are these? Disvalues. These are disvalues. Dekho, if a civil servant has a house which is not necessarily through the legitimate means, he cannot have that. The society or us as individuals, we don't judge him on that grounds. We say, देखो कितना बड़ा घर है. And how do we have actually developed that? Because of the values that are being held by an individual. Clear? These are disvalues. These are disvalues. Clear? So morality is always having the right consequence, but values can be either positive or negative. Negative values can be considered as disvalues, and that is the primary difference between individual values and morality. Clear? The same is true also for what? Social values versus ethics. The same is true for social values versus ethics as well. Why? Because social values are what? Again, the values which are common. They are common values. Social values are what? Values of the society. So values of the society are what? Common values. Values of the society, they are common values. This is how we also defined ethics. What is ethics? What is commonly considered as right. So what is the difference between the two? Again, the same diagram. The same diagram. These are social values. This is ethics, and there is this overlap. Why is there an overlap? Because again, this relationship is there. Ethics is the result of social values, or social values may be the result of ethics. This is the relationship that does exist. Again, social values, why? Let's take an example. Social values are values that the society holds. Values that the society holds. So if you look at, suppose, Indian society, there are certain disvalues that are present there as well, like the disvalues of patriarchy, the disvalues of patriarchy, or for that matter, some other practices that are there, like dowry, etc. In India, you will see one of the social values is lack of independence. We are too concerned about what others may think of what we are doing. So what happens is, it guides our behavior, and that is the reason why you will find in India, we are always dependent on others to take our decisions rather than taking them for us. Rather than taking them for us. In a country like India, the Indian male is said to be psychologically important. Psychologically important. Why? Because our decisions are taken by someone else. So, which school you have to attend is decided by your parents. Okay, fine. School tak theek hai. You are not in that particular age group to decide that. What clothes you wear is not decided by you, it is decided by someone else. Forget about that also. Now comes the main thing. After you have completed your 12th standard, which vocation you choose is not decided by you, it is decided by someone else. So your parents will force. So you wanted to be what? You wanted to be a chef. ठीक है, पापा ने क्या बोला? पापा ने बोला बेटा बावर्ची बनोगे, and you went then became an engineer. It is decided by someone else. Once when you are to marry and whom you are to marry is also been decided by someone else. Forget about that. When you are when you are capable of having children is also decided by someone else. When are psychologically impotent, we are not deciding for ourselves. Clear? And this is what, where does it originate? Social values. It originates from the kind of values that the society holds. Because the way it works in a country like India is, if you tend to take your decisions, you will be considered as a rebel. It's not considered that you are taking your decisions for your own welfare. ऐसा माना जाएगा कि आपने जो डिसीजंस लिए हैं वो दूसरे से, यानी अपने पेरेंट्स या अपने ग्रैंड पेरेंट्स से झगड़ के लिए हैं. You will be classified as a rebel, and that is not what is accepted here in a country like India. ये क्या है? Social values. But ethics is different. Why? Because ethics will always result into something which is in common good. Ethics will always result into something which is in common good. So what is the difference? Social values may be negative also. Patriarchy, dowry, such things. But ethics will always be something which will result into something that is right, common good. So there is a difference between social values and ethics. There is a difference between social values and ethics. Clear? Have you understood what is the difference between values and classification of values into two, individual and social, and how individual value differs from morality and how social values differ from ethics? Is this understood? Is there any doubt that you have? Any doubt? Anything till now, up to now, whatever we have discussed, any doubt that you have, you are going to ask me. Yes, any doubt? Anyone having any doubt? Anyone feels that any part of our discussion, I'll give you 2 minutes. Go through whatever you have written. Whatever you have written, go through it and see that if you feel that there is something that you have not understood, you can ask me that. Don't worry about it. If I leave these values, what will it lead to? Negative morality. See, there is nothing called as negative morality. There is immoral actions, but not negative morality. So if you do not follow certain values, or if you follow certain values, or you can say disvalues, then in that case you will have immoral actions. So see, just go back. Clear? Come back to this slide. If you hold the right set of values, your actions will always be moral. If you hold disvalues, your actions may be immoral. Your actions may be immoral. The example that he said, punctuality, how I related it to immoral actions. Lack of punctuality and how that resulted into some immoral actions. Clear? So, if you hold the right set of values, your actions cannot be immoral. Right depends upon your values. If your values are right, your actions cannot be immoral. But if you hold certain disvalues, your actions would be immoral. It would result into it. Okay. Let's try and do what? Let's try and understand what she has said. Clear? Civil services. Now, my question is, As a civil servant, why is it important for you to have the right set of values? What is the relationship between values and a ideal or a good civil servant? Yes. What is the relationship between them? No, I'll repeat what I'm trying to say. My question is, what is the relationship between values and a good civil servant? Yes. Anyone? A good civil servant will have positive individual and social values. I agree to her. Give me an example. What kind of values are you referring to? You are absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. But what is the values that you are referring to? Hmm. 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 No. If suppose as an individual I have the right set of values, then why will I have to look at the values of someone else and not me? Are you getting what I'm trying to say? See, what she said, first of all, let's try and understand this through an example, and then I will tell you exactly the reason. She says that, sir, if a civil servant has the right set of values, what kind of values would he has to have? He has to have right set of positive individual or social values. Absolutely correct. She is absolutely correct. Why a civil servant? No, no, a civil servant, as a civil servant, why do you require right values? Because when you have right set of values, you have the capability to do what? You have the capability to think not just for yourself, but also for others. Clear? Now just think of it in this manner. As a civil servant, tomorrow, I'm just going to put you in a situation. Tomorrow, you are, suppose, responsible for, or you are heading a commission which is responsible for enacting a policy or coming up with a policy for the government of India to ensure quality education for the poor. Quality education for the poor. Now, are you poor? No. You are a civil servant who is a very high ranking officer in the government of India. So your salary, your allowances are, in the top 5% of the India's population. So you have no experiences with poverty. You are not in that position of poverty. You are not an individual who is going to take a decision which is going to concern you. You are going to take a decision which is going to concern what? People who are different from who you are. Which means is the statement correct? A civil servant is not a stakeholder to the decisions that he or she is taking. So you are always taking a decision which is generally concerning others, not your, not it's not your, no, it's not a decision which is going to affect you as much as it is going to concern or affect others. Sometimes कुछ ऐसे समय होंगे जहां पर जो भी डिसीजंस आप ले रहे हो, एनी डिसीजन दैट यू टेक, it is not something that is going to concern you at all. When you are in this service, tomorrow you are in such a high position, you have nothing to do with poverty, you have nothing to do with those welfare policies and programs which the government is going to come up with. You are not the beneficiaries there. No, you are not only you, your family is not a beneficiary. Your children are not a beneficiary. Your parents are not a beneficiary. Generally, your relatives are not going to be a beneficiary of it. So the policy decisions that you are making are not decisions which are going to concern you. You are not a stakeholder. You are not a stakeholder. If you are not a stakeholder, don't you think only a civil servant with right set of values has the capability to understand the responsibility that he or she has? Only a civil servant with right set of values. Now, she said what? She said, sir, values and morality. So why, see, if you have a civil servant having the right set of values, will perform those actions which are moral. Because in this case, as a civil servant, the responsibility that you have to discharge that responsibility, and your actions are going to concern maybe hundreds, thousands, crores of individuals, your actions. Now, can I leave this on an individual who does not possess the right set of values? Can I leave this decision making for that individual? Because if I do that, he will have only the capability to look at his own benefits. So in this case, a civil servant, suppose in this position, may talk about privatization of education. Privatization of education may definitely have positive results, but will it have positive results for those individuals who may not necessarily have the capability to afford them? The answer is no. So in this case, he may think of few, benefits of few, but not the benefits of the majority, or you can say all. Are you getting what I'm trying to say? And that is the reason why values become important. Values lead to moral actions. Lack of values or disvalues lead to immoral actions. See this. Consider these 4 situations. We are talking about a civil servant. The first situation is where a civil servant is efficient, he's efficient and has the right set of values. The second situation is where there is a civil servant who is inefficient, but has the right set of values. Then there is a third civil servant who is efficient but possesses disvalues. And then there is a civil servant who is inefficient and possesses disvalues. There can be these four kind of civil servants. A civil servant who is efficient has the right set of values. A civil servant who is inefficient having the right set of values. A civil servant who is efficient and having disvalues. And a civil servant who is inefficient and having the disvalues. Now, if we look at these two, civil servants, this civil servant will always be an asset. This civil servant will always be an asset, and this is the kind of civil servants that we want, having the right set of values and being efficient. This civil servant that is efficient with disvalues, this civil servant is always not just a liability, but he has the potential to become what? A danger for the society as a whole. This civil servant is a future asset. This civil servant is a future asset. Why am I saying a future asset? See, inefficiency you can overcome. How? With training and with experience. With training, with experience, you can overcome that inefficiency. So you will do what? You will later on become an asset. But this civil servant who is inefficient and has disvalues. Now, because he is inefficient, so presently he is not a danger, because he knows that he is not in a position to look or do something of such nature. So right now he is not a danger, but he is a future danger. Why? Because this inefficiency can again be overcome by training and experience. So you can see that the values are so important, because the other thing does not matter. Efficiency or inefficiency, it will not matter, because once you gain the necessary experience, you are going to become efficient. You are going to be trained elaborately in procedural, and now there are so many things that are coming up, new aspects that have been evolved by the government. So you will become efficient. But values are not something that would automatically change. And that is the reason why, that is the importance of values. Values result into moral actions, and lack of values, or you can say disvalues, would result into immoral actions. So this civil servant will do what? This civil servant would involve in such actions which has the potential to shift the society into what? In the past. Rather than providing a progressive outlook, it has the potential to regress the society. No, this is not the kind of civil servants that we want. The values are important, because you can see this, what happens. In India, you will see examples of cases of corruption. Like, you must have heard about the 2G spectrum case. In the 2G spectrum case, the CAG, the Comptroller and Auditor General's report that was there, it said that India's treasury lost 1,76,000 crores. See, this is such a big an amount which has the potential to regress the whole country. 1,76,000 crores. Do you think that the minister who was heading that very organization had the potential to do this just by his own self? No, it cannot be. What was 2G spectrum? What is spectrum? It is just waves, something that is intangible. इट इज बीइंग सोल्ड, ऑक्शन किया जा रहा है. उन्होंने क्या कहा? फर्स्ट कम फर्स्ट सर्व. सो एनीवन हु is ready will be given this. Comptroller and Auditor General says, why not auction? And when auction was held, it actually fetched more than 1,76,000 crores. You can understand who has the potential to think in this manner. Only those who are efficient and have these values. Only they have the potential to think in this manner. Those who are inefficient and having these values, they will do what? They will take up corruption, which is such a minuscule amount, which may not necessarily affect this large an effect. So they will be a danger, but not that kind. But those who are efficient and have these values, so they think in that manner. They are geniuses, but they will think with the negative sense, these values. And what would be the result of it? The result of it would be that you will find a country like India regressing in this manner. It is because of this. Clear? Are you getting what I'm trying to say? This is the importance of values. Clear? Clear? Now, moving on. The last term was attitudes. So, yes. Yes. Yes, it would, but provided you are, see, when I say value system change over, when you say value system change over a period of time, absolutely correct. Today you are here, an individual, who has experiences with organizations, like tomorrow when you get into the organization which also teach you new values. Organization will also teach you new values. But whether they teach you the right set of values is not a guarantee. Values would change, but does it mean will it, will it improve or will it deteriorate? Is not a guarantee. It is not a guarantee. It depends upon a term that I will be talking about most probably tomorrow, called as socialization. So what is that? I will talk about that tomorrow. Right now, let's come to this very idea, that is discussion of this very term, that is attitude. देखो, attitude एक ऐसा term है जिसे generally we tend to think in this manner that attitude is something which is always a negative thing. ठीक है? जैसे when we look at an individual who, we tend to say बहुत attitude है उसमें. This is general usage of the term, but that's not correct. Attitude not necessarily is a negative term. Attitude means what? Attitude is a psychological tendency. This means psychological. It is a psychological tendency to act in a positive or a negative manner which develops based on the experiences we have, which develops based on the experiences we have, based on the experiences that we have. Now, the experiences that we have, it leads to development of our attitudes. Now, When we say a psychological tendency, this psychological tendency can be with respect to anything. When I say anything, what do I mean? So I can develop an attitude against a person, thing, event, or an issue. And my attitude can either be positive or negative towards a person, thing, event, or an issue. Clear? And why would it be positive or negative? Because of the experiences we have. Because of the experiences that we have. So, the experiences define whether, what kind of psychological tendency that I develop. See, psychological tendency means a mental predisposition. A mental predisposition to act in a certain manner. Yes? Yes. A mental predisposition to act either positively or negatively. So this is what? This is based on my experience. So see, if my experiences with a issue or on a thing or for a person is correct, is right, I am going to develop positive attitudes. And hence, my mental predisposition would be positive. Like, if I meet an individual and when I'm discussing, I'm taking up a discussion on a certain issue, I feel that this individual is, he is someone, or she is someone who I enjoy talking to or enjoy the company of. What will I develop? Positive attitudes. What will that be? Psychological predisposition would be positive. So tomorrow, or maybe in future, when I get an opportunity to interact with him or her again, I would be open to it. Yes, why not? But if my experiences are not right, if I feel, what is this individual talking about? The wavelength does not match. Well, then a chemistry. If it is not right, what will be the result of it? Negative attitudes. Negative mental predisposition. What will be the result of it? No. Tomorrow, if I get an opportunity later on, no. I'm not going to act in that very manner. Similarly is the case with events and issues. Events and issues. Like if we talk about, issues. Let's take an example. Take an example of, suppose, you being an environmental activist. And because you are an environmental activist, so there was an event that was organized by an organization which was aimed to something like protecting the environment or something like that. Because you have this is one of the values that you hold, what you will do? You will say, yes, I will go to that event. When you go to that event, what do you see there? You see there that people are not necessarily concerned with the environment, and the event seems to be more political, organized against the government or some other organization. what will that result into? Your attitude. Why? Because your experience has defined your attitude. Next time when you get a similar opportunity, you say no, these events, rather than talking about environment, they're more political, and you may not necessarily act in a certain manner. If we talk about, no, suppose events like, no, suppose there is a family event being organized. Family event. You go to the family event. There is a marriage. One of your cousins is getting married. You go to that event. As soon as you reach that event, everyone is concerned about your future. They start asking. Beta kya kar rahe ho? You have no answer. Why? Because preparation for civil service is not an answer for this. And even if you are new to this, you say, okay, preparation for civil services. There would be some individuals who would be completely there only with one objective. What is? To demoralize you. बेटा इससे कुछ नहीं होता, कुछ और कर लो. देखो, what is your experience? Not good. Your future, no, future actions is determined by your current experiences. Why? Because it results into attitude formation. And what will be that attitude formation? Attitude formation would be, no, these events are not for me. When we talk about girls, when you attend some marriage function, they are concerned about your marriage there itself. When are you going to get married? When these experiences are going to define what? These experiences are going to define your attitudes. Clear? Thing. Food, for example. So if suppose there is a place that you want to visit because you have heard a lot about the food that it serves, your experience is going to determine your future attitude. If you go there and you find the place to be too hyped but not serving that quality, what is that? Your experience. And your experience has resulted into an attitude. What is that attitude? Negative. Tomorrow, no. Or next time, no. That is what an attitude is. Clear? It is we develop a certain attitude which helps us guide our behavior, like that of values, like that of morality, like that of ethics. It helps us what? Guide our behavior. It helps us guide our behavior. And how do we develop that? Based on experiences. Clear? One more thing. Sometimes these experiences may not be direct. They may be indirect. See, not all experiences are direct. There are something called as indirect or vicarious experiences. What does that mean? It means you did not go to the particular place, restaurant or hotel, suppose, but you have heard it from someone that it does not serve right or good food. That is also going to lead to your attitude formation. Sometimes media, it very much is responsible for our attitude formation, because the kind of era that we live in, this is an era of social media where we are present almost 24/7. We are there. We are bombarded with information, with experiences. Sometimes it is experiences. You will find, you go through a YouTube channel and you will find there are people who are constantly talking about their experiences. In fact, there is a concept wherein people now tend to share their experiences. So that kind of experiences are going to result into your attitude formation as well. Because not all experiences are direct experiences. There are some indirect experiences which we also have. Clear? Are you getting what I'm trying to say? So whenever we talk about a person, our attitude is towards whom? A person. An individual whose company we may enjoy and an individual whose company we may not enjoy. And depending upon that, depending upon the experience that we have, we will develop either a positive or a negative attitude. That means either a positive or a negative psychological tendency. Similarly is the case with things, events and issues. Clear? So, what are attitudes? These are our psychological tendencies. And we don't hold 1, 2, 3, 4. We hold unlimited attitudes. So many attitudes we hold. Because we meet so many individuals, we experience so many things on daily basis. And as we know, not all experiences are direct. There are also indirect experiences. So all of this does what? All of this results into attitude. Clear? So what have we discussed? What is morality? What is ethics? What are values? And what are attitudes? The important thing is, why have we been talking about this? ठीक है? So ऐसा क्या है इन चीजों में कि हम from the very time that we had started, we have been discussing about this. What is so special about it? What are these? These are nothing but these are guides of our behavior. These are what? These are, what do they do? Whether it is morality, whether it is, ethics, whether these are our values, or for that matter our attitudes. These are what, these are the basic content of our personality. These are what? These are the basic content of our personality. This is who we are. If I, very early stages, जब बचपन में थे, तो इंग्लिश टीचर या हिंदी टीचर क्या बोलते थे? राइट एन एसे ऑन योर फादर और ऑन योर मदर. ठीक है? और हम क्या लिखते थे? We basically did nothing but quoted our their attitudes, their values. ये बात अब हम समझेंगे. Like if I tell you to describe your parents, your father or your mother, you will come out with certain things. Like you might say that my father is very hardworking. My father is an individual who is very respected in the society. My father is someone who takes care of his family. Along with me, my siblings, my mother, and my grandparents, maybe. What are these? Nothing, but it is his values. These are his values. If you say, my mother is very, caring. When you say the term caring, is what? It is her value. It is her value. And her value towards you is what? Her attitude. Caring, it is a value that she possesses towards you. When it is directed towards you, what does it become? Her attitude towards you. It is her attitude towards you. And similarly, morality and ethics. See, these are basically nothing but the content of our personality. This is who we are. Whenever you think of yourself, so if I think of myself or you think of yourself, you will always think of yourself by listing down some values that you possess, some disvalues, not just values, some disvalues also. It's not that we all are always right and we always have good things to say about ourselves. We know that there are certain problems and certain weaknesses that we do have as well. Like we say, anger is one of them. मुझे गुस्सा नहीं आता, लेकिन जब आता है तो मुझे, we know that there are times when we have certain disvalues as well. Lack of punctuality may be one thing. Sometimes we tend to be too casual about things that we need to be give importance to. Too casual. Like UPSC preparation. Sometimes too casual. What are these? Content of our personality. And this does what? All of this helps Why are these so important for us? Because this helps in decision making. It helps us in decision making. What did I say? A right civil servant has the capability to, or a civil servant with right set of values has the capability to not just look at his own benefits, but also the benefits of others. How will he do that? By taking certain decisions. By taking certain decisions. Just think of it. After the 12th standard examination, जब 12th standard का examination हो गया या होने वाला था या somewhere around that time, तो आपने डिसाइड किया, कुछ आप में से कुछ लोगों ने सोचा कम लेट्स आई विल टुमारो टेक अप अ वोकेशन ऑफ इंजीनियरिंग, किसी ने सोचा चलो मेडिकल करेंगे, किसी ने सोचा चलो आर्ट्स लेकर पढ़ेंगे, सम ऑफ यू थॉट ओके व्हाई नॉट स्टडी कॉमर्स, समथिंग लाइक दिस. हम में से किसी ने यह सोचा चलो क्रिमिनल बनते हैं. हाँ, नो, एटलीस्ट मोस्ट ऑफ अस डिड नॉट थिंक इन दैट मैनर. देखो व्हाई, द इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग, फाइन, whatever example, just think of the importance of this decision or the reasoning behind it. The reasoning behind it is ethics and morality. Because ethics is, as you have written, it is common understanding of what is correct. Or common understanding of what is correct क्या dictate करता है? We have to do something which is good, which is right. And being a criminal is not good or right. है ना? This is what ethics dictates. And because of that very understanding that we had, that ethical understanding that we had, we decided that we will choose a specific career or a profession which is different from being a criminal. It was a decision that we took, a decision based on our understanding of ethics. इसीलिए तो मैं कह रहा हूं, what does it do? It actually helps us make decisions. This is what it does. Just think of it. If I take a decision which is, let's go back. If I take a decision which goes against my moral standards, my individually held moral standards, if I take a decision which is contrary to it, what will be the result of it? Guilt. Don't you think? Guilt hoga, remorse. We feel uneasy. कुछ ऐसा किया है जो नहीं करना चाहिए था. Guilt, remorse. What is the result of it? Guilt or remorse. If you do something which is unethical, what is the result of it? Social ostracization, social boycott, वो result होता है. Social ostracization, it means social boycott. देखो, if we decide, as we go back to the same example, 12th standard, अगर क्रिमिनल बनना था या किसी ने ऐसा किया होगा तो उसका रिजल्ट क्या होगा? सोशल ऑस्ट्रेसाइजेशन. कोई नहीं चाहेगा, या सोसाइटी में लोग उनसे इंटरैक्ट नहीं करेंगे, उनसे दूर रहेंगे. अगर कुछ घर पे इवेंट्स है, तो बुलाना नहीं है, या बुलाया भी गया है तो इट इज जस्ट समथिंग विच इज डन आउट ऑफ मे बी फियर, है ना? तो सोशल बॉयकॉट हुआ है, सोशल ऑस्ट्रिसाइजेशन है. इफ वी डू नॉट फॉलो एथिकल स्टैंडर्ड्स, व्हाट इज द रिजल्ट ऑफ इट? द रिजल्ट ऑफ इट इज social ostracization. Similarly, when we talk about values, go back to the mother example. It was an act against values. क्या हुआ result? Guilt. Guilt, remorse. जब तक फिर until unless I make up for my actions, I will not be able to be at peace. क्यों? Guilt. Attitude. Our behavior is also dictated by our attitudes. And if if a behavior that I showcase is contrary to our attitudes, ऐसा नहीं होगा कि हमेशा हम अपने एटीट्यूड के अकॉर्डेंस में ही एक्ट करेंगे. That is not the case. There are some times wherein we tend to do what? We tend to act in against our attitudes as well. Let's take example. See, even if your past experiences have dictated that suppose I have met an individual and I did not like the experience. Even if I meet him again, suppose by chance, मैं वैसे तो कोई एफर्ट नहीं करूंगा उससे मिलने का, but suppose socially he comes, then it's not that I will ignore him also. What will I do? I will just greet him. That's it. But my attitude that is there, my behavior is against my attitude. Like sometimes what happens is, suppose like our neighbors, too concerned for your actions. उनको अपने से ज्यादा दूसरों में मजा आ रहा है कि दूसरा क्या कर रहे हैं, तो वो ये देख रहे कि आपके घर पे क्या चल रहा है. So whenever you go out of your house, there will be one individual who will ask you, बेटा कहां जा रहे हो, कहां से आ रहे हो. ठीक है, there are two individuals, there are individuals concerned, and you do not like that. That means that action has not resulted into favorable attitude formation. But you will still not do what? You will still not start abusing that individual. आप क्या करोगे? You will just greet that individual and that's it. Sometimes because we are in a social situation, we don't showcase our real attitudes. In a serious context देखते हैं, communalism. Don't you think this is a very prevalent attitude? Your religion is important and most of us may not necessarily be tolerant enough for the practices of other religion. But so that means we are communal. That means, and most of us are. But what will happen? When I am in a social situation, I will modify my behavior. So sometimes we act in contradiction to our attitude as well. And what does that results into? There is a term called as dissonance. So when we act against what our attitudes dictate, we feel what is called as dissonance. For now, I will be talking about what is dissonance. There is a dissonance theory itself. We will be discussing that also. Don't worry about it. For now, just understand it as a mental state of uneasiness. A mental state of uneasiness. We are not very comfortable, like is the case in guilt. Now, when you feel guilty about something, you are not at very ease. Suppose you have done something against an individual, you do not want to meet that individual, you feel guilty. तो वो मेंटल स्टेट जो होता है ना ऑफ अनइजीनेस, समटाइम्स इट इज ऑल्सो डिस्क्राइब्ड एज डिसोनेंस. क्लियर? सो गोइंग बैक, why will it help in decision making? Because if we do not act in accordance to our morality, ethics, values and attitudes, what will be the result of it? A state which is an uneasy state. चाहे वो गिल्ट से हो या रिमोर्स से हो या डिसोनेंस से हो, बट इट इज अ स्टेट ऑफ अनइजीनेस. इट इज अ स्टेट ऑफ अनइजीनेस. Clear? And that is the reason why these are what? These are certain things which help in our decision making. We tend to act in this, no, what according to what is dictated by this. Clear? That is the reason why they are also called as sometimes mental shortcuts. For what? For decision making. They are also called as mental shortcuts for decision making. Clear? Any problems? Just take 2 minutes and go through everything that you have written. Just go through it in 2 minutes, and if you think there is something that you want me to discuss again, I'll talk about it again, or for that will be it for today. We'll meet tomorrow, we'll take up our discussion. Take 2 minutes, just go through whatever we have discussed. Yes, just a moment. Attitude and tomorrow's class, I'll be discussing that, don't worry, tomorrow. Just a moment, just a moment. Yes. हाँ. लॉन्ग टर्म कॉन्सिक्वेंसेस हो सकता है ना, पीस. यस, वॉर का ऑब्जेक्टिव पीस भी तो हो सकता है. इफ देर इज वॉर, it may result into peace. So yes, there is a temporary, you can say, bloodshed. There are people losing their life, but long term peace bhi to ho sakta hai. Yes, any questions? Done. Okay, yes. Social disvalues? Yes, yes. Social disvalues has the capability to lead to consequences which are unethical. Yes. See, patriarchy and female feticide related hai. It's related. If you give too much importance to patriarchy, so this constant urge of getting a boy child may lead to a commitment of an offense like female feticide. Yes. Push. Okay. Thank you. We'll meet tomorrow.